A single act of kindness made him an enemy of the Empire and a savior to millions. Asterisk. The emergency beacon screamed through the void, its desperate signal cutting through the silence of deep space. Captain Jake Morrison had been running cargo between the outer colonies for 3 years, and he'd learned to ignore most distress calls. Pirates used them as bait, and the Galactic Empire rarely rewarded good Samaritans. But this signal was different. It came from a ship he didn't recognize, broadcasting in a language his computer couldn't translate. Jake's weathered hands gripped the controls of his small freighter, the Wanderer. His brown eyes studied the scanner readings with growing concern. The ship was massive, easily 10 times the size of his vessel, but it was dying. Power readings flickered weakly, and debris fields suggested recent battle damage. Whatever this thing was, it was far from home. "Computer, scan for life signs," Jake commanded, his voice rough from years of solitude. "Detecting 17 life forms, species unknown. All readings show critical medical distress." Jake cursed under his breath. 17 beings, probably aliens, dying in the cold darkness of space. The smart thing would be to report this to the Empire and let them handle it. But Jake had seen how the Empire handled alien contact before. Fear and paranoia ruled their decisions, and first contact usually meant first blood. The massive ship was beautiful despite its wounds. Its hull gleamed with an organic smoothness that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Strange symbols pulsed weakly along its surface, probably some kind of writing. Jake had never seen anything like it, and he'd traveled to the edge of known space. "All right, you bastards," Jake muttered to himself. "Let's see what you're made of." He maneuvered the Wanderer toward the alien vessel's docking bay. The doors opened smoothly, revealing a chamber filled with soft blue light. Jake sealed his ship and grabbed his emergency kit, checking his sidearm out of habit. The artificial gravity felt different here, lighter somehow, and the air tasted sweet when he removed his helmet. The corridor beyond was a marvel of alien engineering. The walls curved gracefully, embedded with what looked like living circuits that pulsed with gentle light. Jake followed the strongest life signs deeper into the ship, his boots making soft sounds on the strange material of the floor. He found them in what appeared to be a medical bay. 17 beings lay on beds that seemed to mold themselves to their bodies. They were humanoid, but clearly not human, with elongated limbs and skin that shifted between silver and blue. Their faces were elegant, with large eyes that remained closed. Several showed obvious signs of injury, with dark fluid seeping from wounds. One of the beings stirred as Jake approached. Her eyes opened, revealing irises that swirled with colors Jake had no names for. She spoke in a musical language that sounded like wind chimes and flowing water. Jake couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. She was afraid. "Easy," Jake said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm here to help." The being's eyes widened with surprise. She spoke again, this time in broken but recognizable English. "You help us? Why?" Jake knelt beside her bed, his expression gentle. "Because you need help. That's reason enough." Tears formed in the alien's strange eyes. "Empire ships they hunt us. We are refugees. Our world is gone." Jake felt a cold fury building in his chest. The Empire had done this. They'd driven these people from their home, probably claiming they were a threat to human expansion. He'd seen it before on smaller scales, but never like this. "What's your name?" Jake asked. "I am Zara. My people, we are called the Etherians. We seek only peace." Jake looked around the medical bay at the wounded survivors. 17 beings, all that remained of an entire species. The Empire would kill them all if they found them. Here, But Jake Morrison had made his choice the moment he answered their distress call. "Well, Zara," Jake said, standing up with determination burning in his eyes. "Looks like you found it." 3 days later, Imperial battlecruiser Dominion's Edge dropped out of hyperspace at the coordinates where the alien distress signal had originated. Fleet Admiral Vance Kellerman stood on the bridge like a statue carved from granite, his cold gray eyes scanning the tactical displays. At 52, he was the youngest admiral in Imperial history and the most ruthless. "Report," Kellerman commanded, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd never been questioned. "Sir, we've detected debris from an alien vessel. Analysis suggests it was heavily damaged before destruction. We're also picking up residual energy signatures from a smaller ship that was here recently." Kellerman's jaw tightened. The aliens had been so close. Intelligence suggested they were the last survivors of the Etherian species, which the Empire had been systematically eliminating for the past year. These beings possessed technology that could revolutionize space travel, but they refused to. "Surrender it peacefully. Scan the debris for any useful technology," Kellerman ordered, "and track that smaller ship. I want to know who interfered with our operation." Lieutenant Commander Beth Hayes, the ship's intelligence officer, stepped forward. "Sir, we've identified the smaller vessel. It's a registered cargo hauler, the Wanderer, captained by Jake Morrison. Former military, served in the Outer Rim conflicts before becoming an independent trader." Kellerman's eyes narrowed. "Background check? Clean record, sir. No political affiliations, no criminal activity. Just a cargo runner trying to make a living. Then why would he interfere with Imperial business?" Kellerman mused. "Track his ship. I want to have a conversation with this Jake Morrison." The hunt began immediately. The Wanderer was fast for a cargo ship, but it couldn't outrun a battle cruiser. Imperial sensors tracked its hyperspace signature across 3 systems before finally cornering it near the mining colony of Kepler-7. Jake Morrison sat in his captain's chair, sweat beading on his forehead as he watched the massive Imperial ship emerge from hyperspace. The Dominion's Edge was 1 kilometer long, bristling with weapons that could reduce planets to ash. Beside him, Zara lay hidden in a concealed compartment he'd hastily constructed, along with 2 other Etherian survivors who'd been strong enough to move. "Unknown vessel, this is Fleet Admiral Kellerman of the Imperial Navy. You will prepare to be boarded immediately." Jake keyed his communicator with steady hands. "This is Captain Morrison of the Wanderer. I'm a registered cargo hauler operating under proper Imperial licenses. What's the nature of your business? You know exactly what this is about, Morrison. You answered an alien distress call 3 days ago. Imperial law requires all alien contact to be reported immediately." Jake's mind raced. If he admitted to the rescue, the Empire would execute him for treason. If he denied it, they'd search his ship and find the Etherians anyway. Either way, he was dead. But maybe, just maybe, he could protect the beings he'd sworn to help. "I don't know what you're talking about, Admiral. I've been running cargo between the colonies for the past week. My logs will show it." "Your logs can be fabricated. Prepare for immediate boarding and inspection." Jake watched the Imperial shuttle launch from the battle cruiser's bay. In 10 minutes, Imperial Marines would be crawling through his ship. He had to make a choice that would define the rest of his life, however long that might be. He activated his ship's internal communication system and spoke quietly to the hidden Etherians. "Zara, can you hear me?" "Yes, Jake Morrison. The hunters have found us. I'm going to try to lead them away from you. There's an escape pod in the rear cargo bay. When I give the signal, take it and get to the surface of Kepler-7. Find the mining colony and tell them you're refugees. Some of the colonists might help." "You will die for this kindness," Zara whispered, her voice heavy with sorrow. Jake smiled grimly. Maybe, but you'll live. That's what matters. The Imperial shuttle docked with a metallic clang that echoed through the Wanderer. Jake stood up, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the airlock. Behind him, the escape pod quietly detached from his ship and began its descent toward the planet below. Admiral Kellerman himself stepped through the airlock, flanked by 6 armed Marines. His cold eyes studied Jake with the intensity of a predator evaluating prey. "Captain Morrison," Kellerman said with false politeness, "I do hope you'll be cooperative. It would be such a shame if this became unpleasant." Jake met his gaze without flinching. "Always happy to cooperate with Imperial authority, Admiral. Though I'm still not sure what this is about." Kellerman's smile was razor-thin. "We'll see about that." The interrogation chamber, aboard the Dominion's Edge, was a study in psychological intimidation. Bare metal walls reflected harsh white light, and the air was kept deliberately cold. Jake Morrison sat strapped to a chair that seemed designed to inflict maximum discomfort, his wrists raw from the restraints. He'd been there for 6 hours, and Admiral Kellerman was just getting started. "You're protecting them," Kellerman said, circling Jake like a shark. "My sensors detected alien DNA traces throughout your ship. You had them aboard for at least 2 days." Jake kept his expression neutral, despite the pain radiating through his body. "I don't know what you're talking about. I transport cargo, not passengers." Kellerman backhanded him across the face, the impact sharp and sudden. "Don't lie to me, Morrison. We know you rescued survivors from the Etherian vessel. The question is, where are they now?" Blood trickled from Jake's split lip, but he didn't break. "Even if I knew what you were talking about, which I don't, why? Would it matter? Since when does the Empire hunt down refugees? Since those refugees possess technology that could destabilize the entire galactic order," Kellerman snapped. "The Etherians can manipulate space-time itself. In the wrong hands, that knowledge could end human civilization." Jake laughed bitterly. "So you decided to commit genocide instead?" "Real noble, Admiral." Kellerman's eyes flashed with anger. "You have no idea what you're interfering with. The Etherians aren't innocent refugees. They're a threat to everything we've built." "I met them," Jake said quietly. "They were dying, scared, and grateful for help. If that's what threatens your empire, maybe your empire deserves to fall." The Admiral's face went white with rage. He nodded to the interrogation technician, who activated a neural probe. Electricity coursed through Jake's body, every nerve ending screaming in agony. The pain was beyond description, but Jake bit down on his tongue and endured it. "Where are the Etherians?" Kellerman demanded. Jake spat blood onto the floor. "Go to hell." The torture continued for hours. Kellerman used every method in the Imperial playbook, but Jake Morrison proved to be harder to break than expected. His years in the military had taught him to compartmentalize pain, to find a place deep inside where the torture couldn't reach. Meanwhile, on the surface of Kepler 7, Zara and her 2 companions had found refuge in the mining colony. The colonists were rough, hard-working people who'd left Earth to escape the Empire's increasingly oppressive rule. When the Etherians' escape pod crashed near their settlement, the miners had initially been afraid. But Zara's gentle nature and obvious need for help had won them over. "They're beautiful," whispered Martha Collins, the colony's doctor, as she tended to the injured Etherians. "I've never seen anything like them." Tom Rodriguez, the colony leader, stood nearby with his arms crossed. "Beautiful or not, they're going to bring the Empire down on us. We should turn them over." "Like hell," Martha shot back. "These people are hurt and scared. We don't hand over refugees to the Empire." Zara looked up from the medical bed where she was receiving treatment. Her grasp of English was improving rapidly, aided by the natural linguistic abilities of her species. The human Jake Morrison. He saved us. He is in danger because of his kindness. Martha's expression softened. What do you mean? Imperial ships hunt us. They will hurt him for helping us. This is the way of your empire. Yes, kindness is punished. Tom's face darkened. He'd lost his own brother to Imperial forces during a mining dispute years ago. Yeah, that's their way, but not ours. Back aboard the Dominion's Edge, Jake's strength was finally failing. The neural probe had done its work, and his body was shutting down from the prolonged torture. But he hadn't broken. He hadn't given up the location of the Etherians. Admiral Kellerman stood over him, breathing heavily from exertion and frustration. You're going to die for nothing, Morrison. My sensors will find them eventually. Jake raised his head with tremendous effort, his eyes still defiant despite the pain. At least I'll die knowing I did something right. Kellerman's communicator chimed. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's from the mining colony. The Admiral's eyes lit up with triumph. Put it through. Tom Rodriguez's weathered face appeared on the screen. This is Tom Rodriguez, speaking for the Kepler-7 mining colony. We understand you're looking for some alien refugees. That's correct, Kellerman replied smoothly. Are you prepared to cooperate with Imperial authority? Tom's expression was stone-cold serious. We are. We want to make a deal. Jake's heart sank. The colonists were going to trade the Etherians for their own safety. He couldn't blame them, but it still cut deep. I'm listening, Kellerman said. The aliens are here, and they're safe. But we're not handing them over to be slaughtered. Instead, we're offering you a choice. Leave them alone, and we'll share something that might interest you more. Kellerman's eyes narrowed. What could you possibly offer that would interest the Imperial Navy? Tom smiled grimly. Information about the Etherian technology. See, it turns out these people are quite grateful for hospitality. They've been teaching us things. Amazing things. But if you want to learn more, you'll have to guarantee their safety. The Admiral's face went red with anger. You're harboring enemies of the Empire. I should reduce your colony to slag. You could try, Tom replied calmly. But then you'd never learn what we've learned. Your choice, Admiral. Genocide or progress? What's it going to be? Jake stared at the screen in amazement. The colonists weren't betraying the Etherians. They were protecting them. His act of kindness had inspired others to stand up against the Empire's brutality. For the first time in his career, Admiral Kellerman found himself facing a choice he couldn't make. With pure force. The standoff lasted 3 days. Admiral Kellerman orbited Kepler-7 with his battlecruiser, unwilling to attack the colony, but equally unwilling to negotiate. The colonists had turned their mining operation into a fortress, and the Etherians had begun sharing their knowledge freely with anyone willing to learn. Jake Morrison remained imprisoned aboard the Dominion's Edge, but his condition had improved slightly. The medical bay had been forced to treat his injuries to keep him alive for further interrogation. He lay on a biobed, his body healing but his spirit stronger than ever. Word of the colonial resistance had spread throughout the ship, and even some Imperial crew members were beginning to question their orders. It's not right, whispered Ensign David Park to his bunkmate as they walked through the ship's corridors. We're supposed to be protecting humanity, not committing genocide. Keep your voice down, his companion replied nervously. You want to end up like Morrison? But the seeds of doubt had been planted. Jake's sacrifice had shown that there was another way, that humans could choose compassion over fear. The crew of the Dominion's Edge began to see their captain's prisoner, not as a traitor, but as a man who'd chosen to do what was right. On the planet's surface, the situation was evolving rapidly. The Etherians, led by Zara, had established a peaceful enclave within the mining colony. Their technology was beyond anything humans had imagined, but it was based on harmony rather than domination. They could manipulate matter at the quantum level, creating tools and structures that seemed to grow rather than being built. "Watch this," Zara said to Martha Collins, holding out her hands. The air between her palms began to shimmer, and slowly a perfect crystal flower formed from nothing. "Your people create through destruction. You break rocks to find metal, cut trees to build homes. We create through cooperation with the universe itself." Martha stared at the impossible flower with wonder. "How is this possible?" "Everything is connected," Zara explained. "Matter, energy, consciousness. Your scientists are beginning to understand this, but they think in terms of control. We think in terms of partnership." The demonstration was being broadcast throughout the colony and beyond. Tom Rodriguez had rigged a communication array that could reach other mining colonies, trading posts, and even some of the outer military installations. The message was simple. There was an alternative to the Empire's way of doing things. Admiral Kellerman watched these broadcasts with growing alarm. Each transmission was like a virus, spreading ideas that challenged imperial authority. If this continued, it could spark rebellion throughout the outer colonies. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Hayes reported, "we're receiving similar transmissions from 12 other colonies. It appears the miners are coordinating some kind of resistance network." Kellerman's face was grim. "How many ships do we have in the sector?" 3 cruisers and a destroyer squadron, sir. But if we attack civilian targets, it could trigger a general uprising." The Admiral knew Hayes was right. The Empire's hold on the outer colonies was already tenuous. These people had left Earth to escape centralized control, and they'd fight fiercely to protect their freedom. But he also knew that allowing the Etherians to spread their influence would ultimately destroy everything the Empire represented. "Open a channel to the colony," Kellerman ordered. Tom Rodriguez appeared on the screen again, but this time he wasn't alone. Zara stood beside him, her alien features serene but determined. The sight of human and Etherian standing together as equals was a powerful symbol. "Admiral," Tom said, "I hope you've given our offer some thought." "I have," Kellerman replied. "And I've decided to make a counter-offer. Surrender the aliens, and I'll guarantee the safety of your colony. Refuse, and I'll order a full orbital bombardment." Zara stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly across the communication channel. "Admiral Kellerman, may I speak?" The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "You're the one they call Zara, aren't you? The last of the Etherian leadership." "I am, and I want to thank you for helping me understand something important about your species." "What's that?" "That not all humans are like you." Zara's words were soft, but they carried the weight of absolute conviction. "Jake Morrison showed me that humans can choose compassion over fear. These colonists have proven that humans can change, can grow, can become something better than what you represent." Kellerman's face flushed with anger. "You know nothing about humanity. We've fought for everything we have, struggled to survive in a hostile universe. Your naive idealism will get us all killed." "Perhaps," Zara replied. But Jake Morrison believed that survival without honor is not survival at all. He believed that how we treat others defines who we are. The Admiral cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. "Prepare orbital bombardment. Target the colony's main settlement." But as the order was given, something unexpected happened. The ship's weapon systems refused to activate. Throughout the vessel, crew members were quietly sabotaging their own equipment. The example of Jake Morrison's sacrifice had finally pushed them past their breaking point. "Sir," the weapons officer reported with barely concealed satisfaction, "we're experiencing technical difficulties with all primary systems." Kellerman spun around, his eyes blazing with fury. "Mutiny! Security! Arrest these traitors!" But the security forces weren't moving. Chief Petty Officer Maria Santos, a 20-year veteran, stepped forward. "With respect, sir, we joined the Imperial Navy to protect humanity, not to commit genocide." The admiral reached for his sidearm, but found his way blocked by his own officers. The crew of the Dominion's Edge had made their choice. They would no longer be instruments of oppression. In the medical bay, Jake Morrison felt the ship's weapon systems powering down. He closed his eyes and smiled. His act of kindness had done more than save 17 Etherian lives. It had awakened something in the human spirit that the Empire couldn't control. The rebellion had begun. 6 months after the standoff at Kepler 7, the galaxy was a different place. The mining colony had become the capital of a new confederation, a loose alliance of human colonies and Etherian refugees working together to build something unprecedented. A society based on cooperation rather than domination. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the New Hope, a ship that perfectly embodied the changes sweeping across known space. Part human engineering, part Etherian technology, it was a vessel that could travel between stars in ways that seemed impossible. The hull flowed with living metal that repaired itself, and the engines drew power from the quantum fabric of space itself. "The integration is proceeding better than we hoped," Zara said, joining him at the observation window. Her appearance had changed subtly over the months. Extended contact with humans had somehow made her features more familiar, more accessible, though she remained unmistakably alien. "Sometimes I can't believe it's real," Jake replied, watching as construction crews worked on the space station taking shape outside. Humans and Etherians labored side by side, their different approaches to technology, creating innovations neither species could have achieved alone. The revolution had not been without cost. The Empire had fought back viciously, and Admiral Kellerman had remained a relentless enemy until his own crew finally arrested him. Dozens of colonies had been destroyed in the conflict, and thousands had died. But for every act of imperial oppression, 10 more worlds had joined the growing rebellion. "The Empire is requesting another negotiation," Tom Rodriguez announced. As he entered the observation deck, the former mining foreman had become the Confederation's first elected president, though he still preferred his work clothes to formal robes. "Same terms?" Jake asked. "Recognition of Etherian rights, withdrawal from occupied territories, and reparations for the genocide attempt," Tom confirmed. "Plus they want access to the new technologies we've developed," Jake laughed. "They want to profit from the same cooperation they tried to destroy." "Fear makes people do terrible things," Zara observed. "But understanding can heal even the deepest wounds." The Etherian's words carried weight beyond their meaning. Over the past months, she had emerged as something more than a refugee leader. Her ability to see connections between seemingly unrelated things had made her invaluable as a mediator and planner. Humans called her the bridge builder, and the title had stuck. "What do you think?" Tom asked Jake. "Should we negotiate?" Jake considered the question carefully. The man who had once been a simple cargo runner now found himself at the center of galactic politics. His rescue of the Etherians had made him a symbol of resistance, but more importantly, it had taught him that individual actions could change the course of history. "We negotiate," he decided, "but not from weakness. They need to understand that the old ways are over." The peace talks took place on a neutral station at the edge of Imperial space. The human delegation was led by Jake Morrison, while the Etherians were represented by Zara and 2 other survivors. The Imperial delegation was headed by Kellerman's replacement, Admiral Lisa Chun, a younger officer who represented the Empire's more pragmatic faction. "The terms you're proposing are impossible," Admiral Chun said during the opening session. "The Empire cannot simply abandon territories it has held for centuries." "The Empire doesn't hold those territories," Jake replied calmly. "The people who live there do, and they've made their choice." The negotiations were complex and sometimes heated, but gradually progress was made. The Etherians' natural diplomatic abilities helped bridge the gap between human perspectives, while Jake's reputation as the man who had sparked the rebellion gave his words enormous weight. The breakthrough came when Zara made an unexpected proposal. What if we offered something the Empire values more than territory? She suggested. What could that be? Admiral Chun asked. Hope, Zara replied. Your people fear the unknown, fear change, fear that they're not strong enough to survive what's coming. We offer a different path. Partnership instead of domination. Growth instead of conquest. She gestured to the holographic display showing the new technologies being developed by the Confederation. Ships that could travel faster than light without consuming massive amounts of fuel. Medical treatments that could extend human lifespans by centuries. Energy sources that could power entire worlds without environmental damage. Join us, Zara continued, and your people can be part of something greater than an empire. They can be part of a future where strength comes from unity, not conquest. Admiral Chun stared at the display for a long moment. And if we refuse? Jake spoke up, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had faced down the Empire's worst and survived. Then you'll be left behind while the rest of the galaxy moves forward. Your choice, Admiral. The treaty was signed 3 weeks later. The Empire agreed to recognize the Confederation as an independent entity and to end its aggressive expansion policies. In return, they would receive access to certain Etherian technologies and a seat in the new Galactic Council that was being established. As Jake watched the signing ceremony, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. A simple act of kindness, answering a distress call from strangers, had changed everything. The cargo runner who had once traveled alone through the void now stood at the center of a new galactic civilization. Do you ever regret it? Zara asked, joining him as the ceremony concluded. What? Answering our call. Your life would have been simpler if you'd ignored us. Jake smiled, looking out at the stars visible through the station's massive windows. Simpler, maybe, but not better. Besides, I learned something important that day. What's that? That the universe is too big and too beautiful to face alone. We're stronger together, all of us. Human, Etherian, or whatever species we meet next. Zara's expression grew thoughtful. You know, there are other species out there. Other refuges, other worlds that could benefit from what we've built here. Jake's eyes lit up with the same determination that had driven him to rescue the Etherians. Then I guess we'd better get to work. The New Hope departed the station the next day, carrying the first joint human-Etherian exploration mission into uncharted space. Behind them, the Confederation continued to grow, welcoming new members and new ideas. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and for the first time in centuries, humanity was ready to explore it not as conquerors, but as friends. Jake Morrison's single act of kindness had indeed made him an enemy of the Empire, but it had also made him something far more important. A catalyst for change, a bridge between worlds, and a symbol of hope for millions of beings across the galaxy. The revolution was complete, but the real adventure was just beginning.